Hi, it's Simon here from CFTS, here at the IMHX show in Birmingham. As some of you may know, we're here to promote our new CFTS thorough examination app, and this, of course, is the IMHX podcast special. Of course, we've got Kat with us over the 3 days. She's going out to see the mock trial and talk to some of those involved. It's a complete courtroom scenario, as if somebody was really going through the trial itself. Kat's also going to go out there and talk to some of the industry editors and see what the current hot topics are within the industry.
I'm with Simon Duddy from Logistics Matters.
Hello, Kat. Great to see you again.
Good to see you too. So I'd like to ask you a couple of questions while we're here at IMHX. And I'm interested to know why you think forklift and workplace safety stories resonate with readers.
Well, I think they resonate because they're necessary. They aren't always pleasant reading by any means. You quite often get quite graphic details and difficult accident stories, but it is necessary business information. It's a top priority for any kind of business that's really switched on and taking its safety culture seriously. You have to be tuned into these stories if you want to keep your people safe, and by extension, if you want to keep your buildings and your stock secure as well. So for obvious reasons, these stories, they resonate with the companies that are really keen to sort of push their safety culture forward.
So what role do you see the media playing in raising awareness of safety standards like CFTS?
Well, I think that the media plays a role in sharing information. And I think this has been really important since the Health and Safety Executive had sort of pretty severe budget constraints around 10 years ago. I think it's been very important, especially for business media, to step up and to kind of share this sort of information and put emphasis on it. I think operations professionals, they need to know the latest regulations, for example. They need to know best practice on safety standards. I think CFTS plays an absolutely crucial role in raising safety awareness by reminding forklift fleet operators of their responsibilities for the safe upkeep of equipment, and it's our role to amplify that.
You just mentioned the HSE budget constraints there. Have you noticed more of an appetite for health and safety coverage in industry press recently? Is that as a direct result of that, or...?
It could be. I think there's certainly been plenty of appetite. I think the more tuned in companies have been gradually waking up to the importance of safety and logistics. And I think that's due to many reasons. In part, it's a response to accidents. And in part, I think it's due to safety campaigns that are carried out in industry. And I think this includes the UKMHA's own Forklift Safety Day, which plays a very important role.
So we're obviously here at IMHX. What do you think events like IMHX add to the safety conversation, sort of beyond the regulation and compliance?
Well, I think events like IMHX allow companies to learn from each other. It's a great opportunity to learn more about regulations and compliance, but it definitely offers more than that. You've got relevant presentations that can help users to learn. You've got lots of suppliers on hand who can offer advice. And you've got lots of end users attending the show so they can network and share with each other. It's a great opportunity to meet people and have conversations.
And in your many years' experience as editor of Logistics Matters, what makes a safety story stand out as newsworthy rather than just compliance?
Well, I think safety stories stand out when they're relatable. I think when they kind of deal with an issue that resonates with those who are operating forklift fleets, and the reader can say, that could be me, then I think it resonates with them and it helps to kind of grab their attention and it helps to spark them into action. So I think that's the key element for me.
We're here today with Peter, the editor of Logistics Business magazine. Peter, why do you think forklift and workplace safety stories resonate with readers?
Hi, Kat. Great to be here. Well, one of the things I would say is that when there's a forklift and a human being interaction, it never ends well for the human being. That is fact, sadly. And we're here at IMHX, the big materials handling show. And I've always been told over the years that forklifts will be eliminated from the workplace. It's not the case. There are forklifts everywhere operating 24/7, and it's a very, very important part of the the logistics industry. So forklifts will always be moving around. Personnel will always be moving alongside them. So I don't think the safety messages around forklifts and humans will ever go away or should ever go away.
And what role do you see the media playing in raising awareness of safety standards, such as CFTS thorough examination?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm old enough to know that when I first came into the industry, magazines were read by people who made decisions, by the decision makers within the warehouse. Today, it's a lot more. The age profile is a lot younger, and we're talking about digital natives today who probably don't pick up a business-to-business trade magazine. So I would say that the media, in the way that you describe it, is messaging across digital platforms as much as it is through the traditional print media. I see it playing a very important part. We're bombarded with messaging left, right, and centre, and we need to penetrate through that. And I think the whole thing about the whole safety message can get lost in the noise. So it's one of those ones where if you stop banging the drum, then it'll just get lost completely.
We were watching the mock trial earlier, and one of the things that the barrister actually said was that the health and safety are using shock tactics on their social media channels now. Have you noticed sort of more appetite for shock tactics in health and safety coverage?
Yes, I have, and it's quite worrying to see it, and of course it is, and that's the point of it. There's a lot of noise out there, as I said before. You need to stick your head above the parapet and be heard. And if that's the way to do it, then so be it. I remember, Kat, when you introduced us to Lisa as part of the FLTA at the time, who was a forklift truck victim. She was a victim of a forklift truck accident, and she put across her human story very, very well. It was shocking. We were in tears. She was in tears. We were in tears. But it's effective. It's a day I'll never forget. The story she told, I can remember it word for word. And that of her partner and child as well. I can just vividly remember that. So, yeah, it's shock tactics. It bloody works, I tell you that.
So why do you think events like IMHX add to the safety conversation and sort of beyond regulation and compliance?
Yeah, I think that's it's an interesting question because, I jump out of my car and it's got all this inbuilt safety. I don't have to even worry about switching on my windscreen wipers anymore or turning on the lights. It's all done for me. And I think that's the same with forklift trucks as well. You're expecting forklift truck operators to work in and around where humans are. And sometimes you can forget that actually all these built-in safety devices, they're not enough on their own. You have to emphasize training. You have to emphasize operator safety. You have to emphasize awareness around the operations of these very, very dangerous pieces of equipment. So I think at a place like IMHX, where we are today in Birmingham, I think you've got the chance to really sort of look beyond what's just bolted onto the OEM forklift truck, and it's a great place to do it.
I've just popped back to the CFTS stand to catch up with the technical managers. Hi Matthew, welcome to IMHX. So how does thorough examination directly help reduce the risk of serious workplace accidents?
Hi Kat. So it's designed to prevent workplace accidents by finding the defect before it becomes a serious fault.
So what do you say to businesses who see inspections as a cost rather than an investment?
The whole point of a thorough examination is to ensure that the machine is safe to use. But the byproduct of that is that they can spot defects before those defects become a serious problem. If, for example, if the thorough examination is carried out and the engineer, the competent person, sees a set of forks at 9% and they need to be replaced sooner rather than later, that's safer than having a fork snap and cause damage to racking or, God forbid, injury to persons.
It sounds like it could be life-saving then.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, the competent person carrying out a thorough examination has one main role: to ensure that unsafe equipment is taken out of service.
Why do you think third-party accreditation is so important in building trust between providers and their clients?
So third-party accreditation gives reassurance to the clients, the end user of the equipment, that the person who's carrying out the thorough examination is following a standard, not their standard. It's a standard as set by another body, so that the standard would include things like the competent person must be at least a time-served 5 years competent person. It ensures that the company who are in charge of that competent person are following a standard, a set standard that would be following some kind of procedural code that all the member companies would also follow. So it shows that they're doing their thorough examination to a standard that's not theirs.
Can I ask you a couple of questions about the app? Because I hear that CFTS has developed a new app, and I think it's something that you've been spearheading. Why have you developed a new app?
Well, this came directly from our member companies. They've always been asking about thorough examinations and whether to go electronic, and there's quite a cost attached to buying software to turn thorough examinations from a paper-based system to electronic system. So having listened to our members, we decided it would make more sense for us to actually provide the app for our members, because we would like to say we're the experts in thorough examinations. So why would we not write an app for our members? At the end of the day, we know what we're talking about. We know what the app should do. We know what our members would like to see. So we're writing the app on behalf of our members to ensure that their thorough examinations are carried out to the highest standard.
I think that's a great reaction there to your members' needs. I think that's a really nice thing that you're doing there. But how do you think it will help end users day to day?
So for end users, the electronic side of thing ensures that they don't lose their documentation. It also ensures compliance and a standard thorough examination is carried out. So whether you have provider A or provider B, if they're using the CFTS app, they'll always get the same report of thorough examination.
I believe you've had a few members testing the app, is that correct?
More than a few. We've had about 6 in the first 2 hours. The overwhelming feedback is it's absolutely brilliant. They absolutely love the app. They enjoy the simplicity of it. I mean, it was written for an engineer to use, which is different to other apps in terms of thorough examination, where it's been written by outside companies who have not got the experience of thorough examination. So it's written for the engineers. We've demoed it to as I said, six members. Most of them have been using themselves and playing around with it and saying how simple it is to use and how much they're enjoying it. And it solves the problem of thorough examination conversion from paperwork to electronic. So yeah, we're taken aback. It's the reaction we hoped for. And yeah, fingers crossed when it is launched in the coming months, we can, show our members exactly what we've done for them.
I was going to ask the $1 million question. When is the launch date?
Yes, we are probably looking at the end of October. There's going to be some serious testing in mid-October, but we hope to launch before the end of October.
So Adrian, looking at CFTS then, what difference does CFTS make compared to a non-accredited inspection?
As I'm sure you're aware, currently we have nearly 800 members, or what we call member depots under our scheme, and over 3,000 competent persons. So the benefit of being part of our scheme as a end user or as a service provider would be that we show true impartiality and independence. So we actually onboard members. We make sure that they are competent to do the thorough examinations. We make sure that they are trained on the equipment that they're actually going to be inspecting and working on. Also as well, we make sure, a requirement to be part of our scheme is to make sure that they use the CFTS documentation. And the CFTS documentation makes sure that the end user or the duty holder is compliant under LOLER, as our documentation is fit for purpose under LOLER Schedule 1. So yes, the inspection is the ultimate goal or the holy grail. However, if the competent person does not leave the correct documentation behind, then the end user is potentially open for problems going forward. So yes, the inspection is critical, but the documentation, in our opinion, is just as critical.
Hi, Simon. So I'd like to ask you, what do you think the awareness is of thorough examinations in the materials handling industry is at the moment?
Well, I think it's always been quite difficult to say, because even now, after all these years, I mean, LOLER and PUWER came out in 1998, which was 27 years ago. People still don't realise that it's a legal requirement to get a thorough examination done every 12 months as a maximum. Can be 6 months, can be 4, etc. But we still get, I mean, we're at the IMHX show at the minute. We've still got people come up to the stand today and say that they still didn't realise that it was a legal requirement.
And that's crazy, because like you say, it's been around for 20 plus years. What do you think will help raise that awareness?
So I think definitely shows like IMHX, They're a great way that we can talk to the members and talk to future members as well, not just members that are current members as such. So yeah, I think we've got a great website that's very easy to find your way through. So obviously members can log on to that website and check out information on thorough examinations. Also, new members who aren't actual members of CFTS, they can log on to the website as well and check the same. Plus, of course, there's media. We always check out every week. We've got 3 WhatsApp channels. So agriculture, construction and materials handling. And we issue like a weekly buzz phrase, I suppose you'd call it, yeah? What's the current topic of the week? So there's plenty of places out there, but that doesn't mean that, we're covering everything. There's always, expansion to be made.
That's great. It sounds like you're trying to cover all bases in terms of getting the word and spreading the message out there. What would you say to somebody who hasn't heard of CFTS and if they'd come onto the stand today and had not heard of you?
Well, that's quite funny actually, because I've got a potential new member in my area come on earlier on, and he came out with the phrase which was, I could understand where he's coming from, but he said, I'm only a one-man band. I don't think I'd qualify for CFTS. And I said, look, we deal with the big conglomerates, the Crowns and the Toyotas, etc. of the world, but we also, probably our bread and butter are the one-man bands, because they won't have the technical support department or the training department, so they can use us for all of that. So basically, if you're thinking of becoming a CFTS member, you can go onto the website. It's a really simple process. You just fill in an online application form in, and then you get in touch. That will trigger an email to myself, Adrian or Matthew as technical managers, and then we'll have a follow-up phone call or a follow-up email, and then we'll go about the actual application process. It's very inexpensive, to be honest. The actual membership itself is only £55, which just covers all the admin charges. And then we just ask for at least one of their engineers to sit on a CFTS thorough examination training course.
We're off now to go and see the mock trial. And this is being hosted by UKMHA. Guiding us through the mock trial is Marta Tomlinson. She's a legal director from Kennedy's, and she's been representing clients who've been brought before the Health and Safety Executive for many years now. She'll be helping us with some of the legal jargon and helping us understand what happens in this process. And it's going to be served by the Right Honourable Stuart Taylor from Mentor, who is acting as the judge. Let's go along now and see what happens when a company is brought before the Health and Safety Executive.
Today, we hope to give you an insight into the judicial implications of failure to ensure warehouse safety. Our fictional case today involves Jake Lawson, 18, a Level 2 apprentice supply chain warehouse operative at the warehouse, who was struck by a forklift truck when taking a shortcut across the facility to reach the rest area. Jake unfortunately suffered life-changing injuries, including concussion, fractured pelvis, and a shattered ankle. Jake's employer is being prosecuted for failing to ensure safe systems of work were safe in accordance with Section 2 of the Health and Safety at Work Act, etc., 1974, and Regulation 17 of the Workplace Health, Safety and Welfare Regulations, 1992.
And today I'm going to take you through how a criminal trial might look for a prosecution under the Health and Safety at Work Act.
Ms Bennett, my name's Mr Welch. I'm going to be asking you some questions on behalf of the prosecution. Can we first establish some of the background to this case? How many people does your company employ?
So we've got about 80 people.
And they're all employed within the warehouse?
Well, there's a few managers, including me, but probably about 15 people per shift working in the warehouse.
In your role as warehouse manager, you direct the operations at the warehouse, is that correct?
Yes.
So you will have knowledge as to the health and safety systems and procedures that exist at that warehouse?
Yes.
Can I ask you about safety induction and training itself? What training do generally new employees have?
So when they first join, they would get an induction, and that's so that they know our computer system and so that they understand things like you were talking about with the segregation of pedestrians and forklift trucks and to make sure that they comply with health and safety.
Who provides this induction training?
It's normally me that does the induction.
And how often is that refreshed?
It's a training that we do at the beginning, so we don't refresh it.
So there's no refresher training at all?
No.
So after the evidence is concluded, the prosecution will make their closing speech. So they will gather all the information that's been given throughout the trial, and a bit like their opening speech, they will want to bolster that with the evidence that's been heard and tell the jury why they should convict in this case. The defence then have the opportunity to do the same, and they will try and undermine the prosecution's case and give a speech to the jury about why the company has done everything that was reasonably practicable. The judge then sums up the evidence and gives directions to the jury. In health and safety cases, we often have what's called a route to verdict. Because, as I explained, these cases are not straightforward with the reverse burden of proof, we assist the jury by producing a route to verdict, which is like a questionnaire. So if you've got pens and papers, you might want to take some notes now. And we will now hear from Mr. Justice Taylor.
Members of the jury, my task is to explain our respective responsibilities. That is, my responsibility as a judge and your responsibility as members of the jury.
Right, okay. Jury's verdict's in. It's guilty on both counts. So what would happen now is the case would be adjourned for the day. And as it's a corporate defendant, no one's going to go and relocate to Argentina where there's no extradition order. And a date would be set for a sentencing hearing. And at that hearing, as lawyers, we would prepare an extensive bundle of mitigation. When it comes to sentencing, the first thing that the court will look at is how culpable is the offender. Now, I don't know how clearly you can see this, but this is the table from the sentencing guideline. So on your initial analysis, we've got medium culpability, so that's the third row down. Harm category 2, so the starting point for a fine would be £600,000 with a range of £300,000 to £1.5 million. So what that means is the judge, first of all, starts at a point of 600 grand. Now, we've already seen that those two boxes were ticked. So expose a number of workers and there was actual harm here. So we're going to go up a harm category because those two boxes were ticked. So now we're looking at harm category 1. Starting point for the fine, £1.3 million, with a range of 800,000 to 3.25 million. So as you can see, we've suddenly quite kicked up the gears in terms of how high that fine could be. So if we go back, we've got medium culpability, we've kicked it up to harm category 1, we're starting at £1.3 million. Who thinks that fine should start higher because of some of those aggravating features in this case? Hands up. Okay. It's going to be a bit like an auction now. Do I have an advance on 1.3? 1.5? 1.7? Yeah, 1.7? 1.8? 1.9? £2 million over there to the man in pink. Any advances on 2 million? No. Okay. As you can see, that is quite a catastrophic fine. Now, then what happens is the court make the order. In addition to the fine, the convicted defendant would also have to pay the costs of the prosecution. What's really unfair is if you win, you don't get your costs back. That was removed in 2012, which I think for these types of cases is incredibly unfair. If you've got good insurance, your lawyers will be paid for and you get a team like us. But you would have costs to pay for the prosecution. And I can tell you now that running a trial costs thousands. I'm talking 15 grand a day when you're thinking about the lawyers, barristers, experts you might have engaged in the case. It's a lot of money. And the prosecution will have spent about the same. So you've got that to pay on top. And then in addition to that, you would have to pay what's called a victim surcharge. So every case that goes through the criminal court process has an additional levy put on it. It's about £2,000 maximum now. So that gets topped up. That goes into a separate pot. And what a lot of people think is that when you get to the end of a prosecution and a company's paid a fine, that money goes back to the HSE or the local authority. It doesn't. It goes in the government's pocket. So it's not the prosecutor prosecuting that gets that money. So you can see why there might be some inclination to prosecute more because of the expenditure that comes in. And you'll have read, particularly environmental cases, you might see in the news, water companies get absolutely catastrophic millions and millions of pounds fines. Now, it's not on the slide, but if this organisation had a much bigger turnover, so the category for large is 50 million plus, if you significantly outstrip that as turnover, and there's no defined point for this, the court can consider you a VLO, a very large organisation, and then it gives the judge free rein to ignore this table and start the starting point somewhere else. Because for some organisations, £1.3 million fine is pocket money. So the fine has to be proportionate to the offender. The last bit to mention is the amount of time to pay the fine. There is an expectation it will be paid within 28 days. If it cannot be paid within 28 days, you have to make submissions to the court as to how long you would need to pay. So we quite often get accountants involved who help write reports for the court to say, well, if you want us to pay this fine in the next 3 months, this company will go out of business. And if it goes out of business, all of these innocent employees will lose their jobs. This might be an area of low employment. And that's detrimental to innocent people. And the court will never want to punish innocent people. But they also don't want to give organisations an easy ride. So if you say, well, we'll pay it at 10 grand a month, but your profit is 150 grand a month, well, that's not going to be difficult to pay. So there's a lot of almost horse trading with the court to get to a fine that is A, proportionate, and a time frame that will cause a real strain, but not enough to put the company out of business, but enough to cause disappointment for shareholders and really give the company a kick to say, right, we've got to make sure we get things right going forward. So you've all decided on your sentence, and that is the conclusion of the mock trial.
Hello, Marta. Thank you very much for that fascinating mock trial that we've just witnessed. It was really, really interesting. I just wonder if we could ask you sort of what typically happens when a business is investigated after a serious accident.
Well, there's two aspects that can happen here. It depends really whether there's been a fatal accident or just a serious injury. I'll deal with the fatal accidents first. Typically what will happen is the police will get involved. They will get involved straight away and they will be very heavy-handed. They'll be segregating employees. They'll be wanting to interview. They even have the power of arrest. So if they feel that a manager may have been grossly negligent, they may arrest them then and there. That's worst case scenario. If it's an incident related where there's no fatality, then quite often the health and safety executive or the local authority, if they have jurisdiction, will take over the investigation, and they will generally just start their investigation at a much slower pace. The pace does vary depending on how cooperative the organisation is. If they're being particularly evasive, they'll be more heavy-handed. If they are very compliant and welcoming of the HSE or the local authority, then generally they will build up a good rapport with that regulator, and they will result to, or you just email us the documents, we'll let you know when we're coming in. So it can vary really depending on the seriousness of the accident.
We just watched the mock trial, which was fantastic. How does courtroom settings like that and like mock trials help people understand the real consequences of safety failure?
So it's interesting. I've done a few mock trials throughout my career and they're always really well received. The first thing is it's learning through a bit of fun. So people do like to see the theatrics of having a barrister in a wig cross-examine. But also, quite often, they're designed in a way that the person that is in front of them giving evidence in the mock trial is someone that holds a similar role to them. And it does make them sit back and think, oh my gosh, that could be me. and starts getting them thinking, have I done everything right with my job? Am I making sure that my employees are trained, that my equipment's safe, that I'm looking after the workplace in a way that will stop me being someone on the stand in a real trial event?
With that in mind, what's the sort of single most important step that companies can take to make sure that they stay on the right side of the law?
Two things. First, know the law. So know what your obligations and duties are under the Health and Safety at Work Act and the relevant regulations. And know your industry. So a lot of industries do provide helpful guidance documents, and they will signpost towards health and safety executive guidance that's related, but will also be industry specific. So we'll understand the intricacies and the nuances of those businesses.
So what do you hope that any employees who might have been sitting today to watch the mock trial will have taken away from watching it?
Well, I think what was quite interesting was the shock on people's faces when we tell them how heavy the fine is going to be. You always see the reaction that they just sit back and go, oh, wow, I didn't realise that's what we could end up with. And I think it does make them take note of, actually, we need to make sure this is a priority and that we are putting safety first so that we don't end up in a position where our organisation is subject to a catastrophic fine.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much for sitting down with us today.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
So we're sat here today with Stuart Taylor from Mentor Training, who's just taken part in a very fascinating and interesting mock trial. And I just wonder if we could ask you a couple of questions from a training perspective, starting with what are the common mistakes that you see with forklift safety?
Oh, I think it's a very long list. So in terms of trying to summarize that, I think always my biggest concern is not enough people understand what the requirements are. And the requirements are in place for very good reason. It's well supported by advice and guidance from the HSE and also from associations like UKMHA. And there just seems to be sometimes a lack of either interest or ignorance from a legal perspective in the potential risks and what the requirements are. And of course, with a forklift truck, it's got its own approved code of practice. It's one of the very few pieces of industrial equipment that's got a specific code of practice, which should give people some indication of the potential risk. And when you do see accidents, they're pretty catastrophic as well.
The mock trial that we've just watched, the kind of accidents that we've seen there, I think there was a lack of understanding and a lack of training. So what advice would you give? What sort of training would you give to a company to prevent those sorts of accidents?
I think it goes back to the earlier question. It's your responsibility as a company, as a director, as a manager, to understand what the requirements are. And there is plenty of information there. So you can either read through the documentation, you can talk to companies like UKMHA, you can talk to companies like ours as well, and we will support you in terms of improving your understanding, supporting you with safe systems of work, risk assessments, understanding what the training requirements are. Now, there are a lot of good organisations who can support companies. So no, it's all about awareness, because unless you're aware, you don't understand what the potential risks are and the potential consequences.
And what do you think the industry can be doing to help raise that awareness?
I think the industry does an awful lot already. There's lots, I said earlier, there's lots of information available and out there. I think the issue is people don't investigate. They don't understand necessarily what the responsibilities are or the risks until it's too late. And we always focus as an industry on the most horrific accidents where there's a death or a serious injury. But historically, and this is a little bit anecdotal now because the HSE don't publish the same level of detail in the accident stats, but historically it was always pedestrian trucks had the greatest injury levels.
That's unusual.
But of course, they're not as interesting in terms of publication. So no one talks about when someone's foot was damaged or broken. But I can tell you from experience, if you dislocate your ankle, you're probably also going to tear the tendons and have a fracture. And these can be life-changing injuries. Get interested, understand the risks. You never want to be on the receiving end of it, because it's not just we've been a mock trial. Yes, there's a legal aspect, but it's the emotional damage it does to your employees and the rest of your staff who witness it, and to you, particularly if you're a manager, that you have to deal with that, and then all of the consequences that follow afterwards.
Thank you so much for your time today, Stuart. Really appreciate that.
My pleasure. Great to see you. Thank you.
I'm here with UKMHA Technical Director David Goss. David, what makes this mock trial different from traditional health and safety talks?
So we were trying to bring to life the human aspects that are related with incidents and accidents. That's been the focus of National Forklift Safety Day this year. And the reason is we spend a lot of time talking about what you should do. We spend a little bit of time talking about what you should do when things go wrong. And people know this, but the lesson is hard learnt unless you've had the experience. So the mock trial was to bring to life some of the drama and some of the stresses that are involved, not just for the person that suffered the incident, but everybody that's around them. And sometimes those people suffering include the business.
Yeah, it was very interesting and a very telling situation that they put together, especially sort of going into some of the things like thorough examination. In terms of thorough examination, where would you say the responsibility lies on getting that message out to more end users?
So clearly it's end users' responsibility to make sure that the equipment they're using is safe and that the competent person who has checked the equipment is actually competent. That can be challenging unless you use something like CFTS to ensure that the people are competent. But fundamentally, those are the people with the responsibility. And part of the purpose of the trial was to underline to people that they have these responsibilities.
Just shifting, because we are at IMHX, to the industry more general. What trends are you seeing at IMHX this year?
So I think for the last couple of editions of IMHX, there's been a lot more automation focus. There's obviously a big drive towards automation. That's no surprise to anybody. I think one of the things that's interesting is there's still a role for traditional warehouse trucks, still a role for traditional counterbalance trucks. It's very much a case these days of picking the right solution for your application.
With the shift towards automation, automated trucks, do they still require the same thorough examination as traditional?
Absolutely, they do. The legislation was written at a time before automation was a major influence, and it's quite clear that if it's lifting equipment, it has to undergo a thorough examination, and normally that will be at least every year. It could be more often than every year, depending on the work circumstances, but the fact that it's automated it is not a reason for not having it undergo thorough examination.
So do you think they're going to exist sort of harmoniously between each other, automated and traditional?
I think that's the big challenge. It's very easy to set up a system that is fully automatic, and is relatively easy to set up a system that involves people. Mixing the two together is very challenging. It's partly challenging from a safety aspect, but it's mostly challenging from an efficiency aspect, because the speed of automation and the way it works effectively is very different from the way people work. So making the two work together is probably the future challenge that we're immediately facing.
Do you see anybody overcoming that very well at the moment?
We're beginning to see applications, the sensor technology and particularly the software that's driving these things to make the trucks understand what's going on around them. All of that's developed very rapidly. And so we're seeing solutions really driving productivity gains whilst maintaining a safe workplace. But it's early adopters' time.
And so looking forward to IMHX 2027, what do you how different do you think it will look from IMHX 2025?
I think that's a really good question. One of the great things about IMHX being on a cycle and not being every year is that you see big changes in what's on the floor of the show between events. Whereas if you have an annual event, it's a bit incremental and you don't really notice it so much. So I'm really looking forward to see what there is available in a couple of years' time.
It's great. Thank you very much for your time today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Great to see you all at the Arches, and congratulations in particular to the CFTS winner of the Customer Service Excellence Award. We're now closing the show. This is the end of the IMHX from CFTS. It's been a fantastic time and it was great to meet all of you, and hopefully we'll see you in 2 years' time.